Hi and welcome back to another video of jPlay. I am Marcus and today I'm playing Mission ISS Manage the Station. And as the game comes with a nice solo mode, guess what? I'm playing this game alone. I mean, I play most of the games alone, but today I'm really using the official solo mode. Mission ISS is a cooperative game and I think you can also play it alone, multi-handed, so you don't need to really use the solo mode, but because it comes with one, I'm using it. And in this game we are trying to build the International Space Station, easy as that. And the game comes with a lot of those modules here, which you have to build throughout the game before the time runs out. There are also some, let's call it a way to have a partial victory, let's put it like this. But if you're able to build 12 additional modules before the time runs out, then you really have won or mastered the game. But it's also pretty cool if you're only quote-unquote able to, let's say, build 9, 10 or 11 additional modules, which can be quite challenging, quite honestly. And there are ways how you can tweak the difficulty of the game, which is something I kind of like actually. So we are playing now on the standard difficulty level, and again I'm using the solo mode. I will set up the game for the solo game and then yeah, let's see you all in a minute, or rather second. Okay, and here we are. That's the setup for the solo game at this point in time, or what you're looking at right now. No change to the multiplayer game whatsoever. I will come to the changes in a second. But here we see Module A, which we will start the game with. So here we have Tranquility, and Module A consists of basically 3 sub-modules. Let's put it like this. Down here we have the Soyuz capsule, we have Rusfed, and we have Tranquility up there. And yeah, there is some explanation in the rulebook if you're really interested to see how this game came to life and whatnot. So yes, there is some backstory in the rulebook. Again, I'm playing the game for you today, so I'm not really focusing on a lot of these background kind of things. These cards here, that's actually a very good tip from the designer, Michael Lu, who said typically they come out in an array somewhere next to the game board, but I really think this helps a lot when you place the actual new module card next to those connector spaces. So yeah, the station is being preset, so I cannot, like a Dungeon Explorer, build and whatever, however I want to have it look like. No, I have to follow a certain pattern here, but those cards really do help me to understand, okay, which modules go where. So we know here, for example, there's a little C here. We know module C goes in here. There's module D and there will be module B. Those cards come with some difficulty values. I will explain those to you when we get there. We will start with some of those, I think, science tiles, science tokens here, which we typically have to engineer, which we have to do science with, and yeah, have to do some our experience with. Well, these also come with a difficulty level, but a lot of those also come with some special bonuses as soon as we have dealt with those. We are starting the game with 3 astronauts, and right now I haven't named those yet. I think this is a Danish astronaut. Here we have a Russian. Here we have a US-based astronaut. There are also a lot more waiting for us. I assembled 3 more because you can have up to 6 astronauts throughout the game, but we only start with 3 of those. So whenever we are dealing with some of those new modules, like this one here, we get a new astronaut from Earth, which is over here, which is our, let's say, time tracker here a little bit. It also collects our, let's say, victory tokens. As soon as we are building parts of the station, we can place our tokens here. These are some special tokens which we hopefully don't need in this scenario here. And here are the 3 remaining astronauts. So we have a German one, a French one, and a Canadian, but the game comes with a lot more actually. So a Japanese one here, for example. I really did that randomly, assembling those. They don't come with any special abilities whatsoever, so if you happen to come from Italy, for example, feel absolutely free to assemble the Italian astronaut accordingly. Obviously the game is in German, so I have to do every translation on the fly. Good thing is the game itself is completely language independent. So all of those action cards here, all the module cards, all of the, I think, incident cards or whatever, are really driven by symbols, and it's really straightforward to understand. Yeah, some of the bonuses you have to use the German explanation for those rules, but once you have these translated, you can play this game totally fine and totally language independent. What you're looking at here right now is really the only real change to the solo mode. Normally in a, let's say, 2, 3, 4 player game, each player starts with 6 or 5 cards in front of them. In the Solo mode of the game, we have basically 3 rows of cards. We are starting with the bottom row. Those are the cards that we currently don't have at our disposal at all, which is really a bummer because the only 2 of our science cards are in here, so we can't do any science action, which is kind of a bummer. And we will also start the game with those 4 cards in our hand, but the combination of our hand cards and the cards here in this middle row, those are the options that we have in this, let's call it, first round of the game. Whenever we cannot play any more cards legally, or we opt to not play any more cards, it's basically a shift end, and then a lot of these things will happen. The timer will advance, we will get some of our cards back, and we can apply our training markers, but those actions I will explain to you when we get there. Again, our goal is to complete the full ISS before the time runs out, and time will run out here at 2011. But there are also some, let's say, in between kind of sub goals. For example, here at 2005 and here at 2008, the game wants us to complete 6 or 9 modules respectively. If we don't have 6 modules, or basically 7 or 6 additional modules when we reach 2005, then we have automatically lost the game. The same is true when we are coming to 2008 and we don't have 9 additional modules, and we also have automatically lost the game. Everything that happens between 2008 and 2011 is then kind of a bonus, let's put it like this. So if we really make it to this space here, we can consider our, let's say, journey a success. But there is again some stage kind of success level, success hierarchy. Again, if we have built all 12 modules by 2000 or before 2011, that's really a magnificent victory. If we happen to only have, let's say, 10 or 11, 9 modules, then it's a somewhat lower victory, but it still counts as a victory. And let me assure you, sometimes these things can become a little bit tricky here reaching it. But those are the real main thresholds, or 3 immediate goals we really have to think about, though that we are not losing the game before 2005 or 2008. Right now, all our astronauts are starting the game here in Tranquility module. And again, from there, we can do various things. First of all, we could start building module B here, which is Destiny, which is relatively easy to achieve. It comes with a difficulty of 2. So I think, and because you see this little astronaut symbol here on this card, we can unlock our 4th astronaut when we build this module here relatively early on, and that's really not a bad thing. Apart from building this module, we can also start to do our science mission, basically getting this tile here unlocked by spending science points from our astronauts here. And that's also important because whenever we are running out of those blue cubes, and more of those tiles will get added throughout the game when we are building the station, so don't get me wrong here. But again, if we are running out of blue dice, we will start using red dice. And whenever we see a red dice on our station, this means we are no longer allowed to extend our station before we have dealt with that red dice. So it's really a balancing act between, maintaining the station or managing the station and extending the station. That's really, really, really a very, very nice, let's say, little twist in this game. You cannot really focus just on extending stuff. You also have to take care of all your science duties as well. As we don't have any science cards available, again, the cards that are here in the bottom row, they are pretty much locked. There are some special abilities coming from those science tiles, which we don't have right now, which might allow us to get a card back into our hand. But again, we don't have those, so we really have to focus on those 4 cards in conjunction with those 3 cards here. And the different actions that we can do, really only 3 basically. We can move, we can train, or we can build. With the build action, there are 2 things that you can do. You can really build another module, or you can also start moving those cute little robonauts here. Simon. And again, Simon is pretty much someone who is an actual, let's call it, character, really a tool that's available on ISS. and pretty much contributing some extra values when he is with an astronaut or other astronauts. So they always add one, either to a science action, to a move action, or to a build action, respectively. But I think right now we can deal with the station without using one of our 3 robonauts here, and actually building the station or this module here as soon as possible doesn't sound to be a bad idea, actually. I would have preferred that this B here would have a higher value, let's say a 4, for example. This would have been perfect, because yeah, it's great that it's easy to build, but we know that things can get more messy or more difficult throughout the game. So there could be an idea to say, let's not build B at this point in time. Let's focus on C, because we should be able to deal with C relatively easily. Or we will go with basically both of those, so we can also build D and B, for example. And I think that's something that we might consider doing now, actually. And there's really not a reason not going for B first, because again, it will unlock us additional astronaut. I think, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, okay. And here are how those actions work in the solo mode. And there we have 2 options. We can either take 1 card from our hand and put it on top of one of those cards here in the middle row, and those 2 cards are then the actions that we are going to trigger in this round. Or we can basically play 2 cards from our hand and place 1 in the middle row and 1 into the top row. And Michael, the designer, kindly told me, and this is really somewhat confusing in the rules, you don't have to stick to this 4x3 grid here. So you can also have in the, let's say, middle row 5 cards or 6 cards, for example, if that happens. So you're not limited to those 5. The rule book is a little bit misleading. It's not written in the rules that it's limited, but all those little graphics seem to indicate that you can have this, let's say, 3x4 grid. But again, that's not true. In theory, you could also have a 5th or 6th card in the second, or maybe even in the top row if you make it up there. And in theory, there is no reason not to build twice right now. So I guess that's what we are doing. We are taking our build card from our hand, we are placing it on top of the middle row, and those 2 cards are the cards that we are now playing in this point in time. And this pretty much means we are doing 2 of those build actions. And as I mentioned, we are starting with B. The difficulty of B is 2 right now. And these things are seeded randomly. So those tokens are basically set as part of the setup. So next time you play, this could be basically, I think the highest value is a 5 here, for example, or could be a 4 or whatever. So this is really changing from game to game, which is something I really like. I'm not a big fan of 2 static games. I think that's something that most of my viewers should already know. And the way how this works now is we have to come up with basically 2 build points, and all of those astronauts come with, let's say, 3 stats. We have orange for movement, we have blue for science, and we have gray for building. And right now we start the game with an astronaut that has a level 2 in building and 2 astronauts that come with a level 1 building. So in total, because they're on the same module, in the same space on the same module, they now come up with 4 build points together. So really not a problem building this first thing here, which means we have unlocked our first component of the station. This goes to Earth because it has an astronaut. I will add another astronaut, and in this case I will go for the German astronaut, because the German astronaut in my case comes with the level 2 in my science department. And this astronaut now goes to module A here, but goes to the Resvert section of the game. So in theory, that's already pretty cool. So he could start extending the ISS here towards to the right. But in order to build module C, we have to come up with 5, let's say, strength points right now. But I think it's also a good idea starting to take care of those science discs here accordingly. But okay, we are not done yet, of course, because we are actually extending the station. This gets flipped. This is now more or less a wildcard, and this wildcard goes right into our hand, so we can use it, yeah, as one of those 4 actions here accordingly. And again, we are building the next module here accordingly, and this goes in here. And again, the artwork on those tiles is really amazing. I really love how you can zoom in into the ISS and really see those astronauts doing their work here, for example. Really nice to look at. We are still not done yet, because next we have to add another of those science discs here accordingly, and this comes with a 5, and I think the lowest are 3 if I recall that correctly, and the highest could be an 8, so basically placing 2 dice on those, which is definitely not easy to deal with. This special ability, once we solve this one here, allows us to move one astronaut to another astronaut. And all of those tiles here also come with a very nice backstory in the rule book telling you why, what happened on ISS. So most of those are based somewhat on real life events actually, and yeah, explaining you why you're getting this bonus here. Really cool. And next we have to draw 2 of those incidents cards. Again, I'm using the German version of the game, German rules, so whenever this comes out in English, those terms could be completely different, but I think you know what it means. Okay, this is the first card, and this means we are adding 1 additional instant marker to module K, which now makes it much more difficult building module K. So I'm drawing those blindly, or 1 of those from the cup, and wow, that's a 6. So we are adding those together whenever we are trying to build module K, and now we have to come up with 10 build points. Yeah, things are really getting really nasty relatively soon. The problem is we have to draw an additional incident card. How nice is that? And wow, module E also gets 1 incident token, which is Harmony, and again I have to take 1 blindly, and that's a 4, another 4. So we now need 8 points in order to build module E later on. Yeah, things are really getting nasty, and I think you can add up to 3 tokens if you're not paying attention, or let's say rushing things through. No, now we really do have an incentive to say, let's try to go for E as quickly as possible before we're adding yet another one of those red tokens, for example. Or maybe we will go for K here with 10 before they're adding. I think last time we played we had one which needed 18 points or 16 points, I believe, and really nasty, and we think we were never able to build that last module actually. That's really something where you have to pay attention. But also, which I like, because again it changes the game each time you play it. The incident cards get discarded, but they will go back sooner or later, so everything will get shuffled back together at some point in time. But that pretty much concludes our very first build action. Again, we are taking this command card into our hand, but also keep in mind this was just our very first build action here. We have played 2 cards, so we played this card from our hand, but we also played it on top of the middle row, which means we are also triggering this build command down there, which is the same thing actually, but this time we are going for module D. We need 3 build points. Again, we have 4 all together, so all those 3 astronauts together are at 3, which means this goes to Earth and only helps us to remember how many modules did we already build. Again, this is our first threshold here. If we make it to this space and there are less than 6 tokens here, then we have a problem, because then we would have lost the game. Again, this gets another command card, and maybe I should have mentioned that those command cards are one use only. So when we use those, they're getting removed from the game. So really you have to be very careful when we are using those. Then we are going for module D, which is Dead End, as far as I can remember. Exactly, that's Leonardo, and again, beautiful artwork here. We are drawing our next science tile, and that's a 6. The bonus here is when you train, you can basically take 2 train tokens. Again, not a bad thing. And that's already our final blue die we have available. So the game only comes with 4 of those blue dice, and we have 3 red dice. And again, the first red dice we see here on the station somewhere will more or less stop our building efforts until we have gotten rid of that thing accordingly. Maybe one thing that we should do now before we continue with this action here, let's put the cards there accordingly. So here goes module I, here goes module E. Again, that's really helping you significantly. Actually, here goes module G. It helps you to really see, okay, where do those modules actually go? And again, I saw that on a video that Michael posted on BGG, and I really think it helps. It helps the game a lot. Let's draw our 2 incidents cards, and that's a good one. That's a good job cards. And again, this incident deck comes with 6 of those. You can add more cards to it to make it more easy. You can remove some of those cards to make it more difficult, but in this case, I totally take it. Second card is, okay, another incident marker that goes to module M. So let's see what we add. Again, I'm not looking here, and that's 7. Okay, M needs 11 build points. Are you kidding me? Okay, let's see about that. But those were both of our actions for our very first, let's say, turn. Again, we are discarding those 2 cards. The good thing is those good job cards also get discarded, so they also will make their way back into the deck. But now we are moving back to our next turn. In a multiplayer game, now the other player would take their turn, and this was basically going back and forth. And also the way how those cards not really work, but how you play those cards, it's a little bit different, because you're always using 1 card from your hand, and then you have to take 1 additional card from one of the other players, which now also means that these cards that you have dealt with from the start of the game will change throughout the game, and also the amount of cards that you have. Let's say you're playing a 3-player game and both players take a card from, let's say, a 3rd player, then this player really has less cards available to them when it's actually their turn. And this is really something which drives the game quite significant, really understanding how you are affecting the capabilities of each player when you're taking cards away from them or giving them cards or whatever. So definitely also a very, very cool experience. But again, it works very, very nice here in Solo 2. Okay, what are we going to do now? And in theory, we have those wild cards, those command cards available to us now, but I'm not sure if we need them. We could also say, let's take a slow turn and simply go with a training card and play the training card on top of the other training card, and then we get 2 training tokens, which is also not a bad thing. On the other hand, we could also consider to get rid of some of those science tiles here, because again, the next science tile we are placing, we will have to go with a red one, for example, and they're all relatively high. And again, we can also unlock some of those bonuses. So let's take this science tile up here. That's only a 4, and they come with 4 science points. Keep in mind, this astronaut here from Russia, he has a science rating or a science value of 2. And again, we're adding those together while they're on the same space of a module. So we could do that, but therefore we would have to use one of our command cards, because we don't have any other science commands in our hand or in the middle row of our display. So yeah, what are we going to do? Or should we start moving here to C and start building? So we could move some astronauts down here to the Rasvet module, and yeah, start building here, because again, now we have 5 build points actually. Problem is, then we know we are placing an additional red disc there, or red die there. It's also not a problem, because then they're all together in theory and could start making progress or working towards this disc here. On the other hand, maybe we should move them down first. Maybe that's actually a good idea. Maybe we should start moving down. Okay, I think I know what I want to do now. Yeah, let's do that. I guess we are playing a movement card on top of this training card here. And we can resolve those actions in any order, by the way. And keep in mind, in a solo game, I could also play 2 cards from my hand and place 1 here and 1 there, for example. That's also allowed according. But in this case, I think that's really okay. We could, again, do these in any order, and there is no reason not going here for this training one. And we have 2 training types available. We have build, we have science, and we have movement. And I think we really need to up our science a little bit, at least with what I have in mind. So let's go for a science training now. Yeah, let's do that. We will place it aside. We will be able to level up our astronauts once we are doing our shift end. And again, we have one movement card. And the way movement works is we are moving along those orange lines here. So this is one movement point, this is one movement point. If this astronaut here from Rust Red wants to move to Destiny, he would need 1-2 movement points here, for example. And works the same way. You're looking at the disk here. Right now this astronaut has a 1, so he could or she could only move 1 space, and if they're all in the same space they can assist each other, so any astronaut in this space could not come up with 4 movement points altogether. But I think in this case we want to move the astronaut from Russia down here to Rust Red, and again we are trying to prepare for building at some point in time, but we are also trying to prepare for this science tile here, so that we're really getting rid of that die here and also unlocking this special ability here, for example. But those were already our 2 actions. So we trained, we have taken one of our training discs here, a science one, and we have moved the astronaut. And the one problem is, and the one thing that you have to be clear about, even though we had 4 movement points here, we cannot split those movements between those astronauts. You can assign both cards to one astronaut, or you can assign one card to each astronaut differently, but you cannot mix and match one card with 4 movement points, for example. That's unfortunately not allowed. You're always assigning a card to an astronaut. Okay, back to our display. These are the cards we have available. That's the training marker we have taken. So in theory we could go for a shift end pretty much any time. As soon as we have at least 1 card here in the top row, we are entitled or allowed to do a shift end. Not sure if we want to do that or not. We have already built 2 modules, which is not terrible, but in theory we might be able to, I think maybe we should consider going for at least build or moving once more. Yeah, let's try that actually. So I guess we are taking this card from our hand, we are placing it here on top of the other movement card here. So we can now move 1 astronaut twice, that's allowed, or we can move 2 astronauts once. And I think in this case, let's move Denmark into B and let's move USA into D. So that's the Destiny module. In total, they have 3 build points between them, and this module here, the T segment here, has a difficulty of 3. So in theory, they should be able to deal with another card, with another action. But I think I may have to pass now at some point in time, because again, the only 2 options I have is either playing 1 card from my hand and place it on top of a card in row 2. Right now all cards in row 2 are taken, so we cannot play any more cards on top of this, or we are playing 2 cards from our hand, but in this case again we have to go with one of those command cards, and right now I don't feel like it actually. And that's not really a problem, as I don't know the solo game at all. I'm not so sure about the timing here. In a multiplayer game, I think I would know now when to call for a shift and seeing what the other players did here. I know I'm taking those cards back, so you can really calculate your way through the game to some extent. Of course, there is some randomness in respect to those incident cards, in respect to those science tiles and whatnot. But apart from your planning, you have a good idea what comes out and what doesn't. And I think, yeah, if we are basically not playing this training card now, we are losing out. Yeah, we are really losing out on this training card here, because if we are now going into a shift and we only have one of those tokens, and now I really kind of regret not having played this training card on top of this training card here. But I think I will call it anyway, because there's not really nothing I can change about that right now. So yeah, let's do that. So I'm doing let's call it artificial shift end. The first thing that happens is that we are moving this little satellite from 1998 to 2000. Hooray! We have really started the game. Nothing happens here. The next event that happens is here at 2002, which tells us that we are shuffling all those incidents cards back into the deck accordingly. Right now, that's not gonna happen. We are then taking all of those cards back into our hand, and there is no hand limit whatsoever, so we have now really a ton of cards into our hand, and we are sliding those cards down. So this is now our basically bottom row, so we know with our next shift and we will take those cards back. This is the middle row, so these are the cards that we can play on top of other cards. For example, so we can go for a build and something, for move and something, or we can build 2 cards from our hand next to that, which could also help us, because then at some point in time we're getting 4 cards back here, for example. Also not the worst thing in the world, but keep in mind we still have this training token, which we are now assigning to one of our astronauts. And I guess we are going with one of those here. And by the way, none of the players is controlling one particular astronaut. So all players are controlling each of the astronauts. That's at least something I should have explained to you earlier than that. In a solo game, it doesn't matter, but it's definitely maybe important to mention for the cooperative version of the game. And I think let's go for the Russian astronaut here. It doesn't really matter at this point in time. So now in total, those guys have a science rating of 5 together, and the maximum that you can have in one of those things is always a 4. But of course we can also start upping, let's say, the build skills from the Russian astronauts or the movement skill from the German astronaut. That's really now a little bit up to us. Okay, that was more or less the shift, and we are taking our next action, and I think, yeah, it's now absolutely time going for a research action. We want to get rid of this die here before we are actually building something new. Yeah, let's do that. And I guess we can then directly build afterward. Let's do that. So we are placing this research card or the science card on top of the build card here. And again, we are choosing the order of things. And in this case, we definitely want to do the research action first. And we want to get rid of this die here. That has a 5. We have a 5. This goes down to 0. In theory, let's say we only would have 4 points. We could use those 4 points to bring this die down here to 1. That's allowed. But you really want to be efficient with your cards. That's why I really wanted to train one of those guys first, so that we can take out this die here with 1 action here. So this die goes back to the supply, which is good, so we can use it. And we have unlocked this tile here. And this special tile, they all come with names, by the way. This is Bland Grow in 0 gravity, as far as I know. And again, there's a nice little backstory of those, but what it does is it gives us a +1 on a research action, on a future research action. So again, giving the same example, let's say the next tile here, it has a 6. For example, we can then spend this tile to up this value to a 6 in total, to then maybe beat this die down here, for example, accordingly, when we ever get there. And this can be used by any player, by the way. We are taking this aside for now, and this was the research action. Okay, that was definitely already good. Then we are taking our second action, which was the build one, and I guess let's go for this. I think that's the only one we can really build right now. Yeah, that's it. So they have a combined build rating of 3, which is cool. This needs a 3, so this goes to our Earth disk. We take this card as another command card into our hand, and so far I haven't used one. I'm kind of proud of that, but it could really come back to bite me. We are placing the T segment here accordingly, and this T segment is E and B here, which only means that you can build this T segment also from a module E. In theory, let's say we would have built E before we build I, then we could also have built I here from the E module there accordingly. It's also another dead end. We are placing another science disk, and bam, of course. Oh, that's so terrible. Yeah, this is one of the science tiles that needs 2 dice. We have 1 blue die, that's not a problem, but we also have our first red die here, which means we are no longer allowed to build unless we have taken care of this die. And this is only the die as far as I know, so we don't have to take care of this And disk as a whole, it really needs to get this measly one down here to a 0. Then we can continue to extend our station here accordingly. But let's go for the incidence count. That's another good job one. I take that. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Oh, let's leave it here. Let's draw the second one. And that's another good job. And keep in mind, the standard game will shuffle 6 of those cards into the deck here accordingly. There are 2 more in the box, so you can really up it up to 8, and then the game gets significantly easier than that. But that was pretty okay, despite the fact that we have added our next red die. And when we are also running out of those red dice, we haven't lost the game or whatnot, we will then pretty much only start using those extra X token. Then we have to, as soon as basically another red die gets free, we are then replacing that X token here with a die respectively. Okay, that was our action, and then we really have to start thinking, how do we get rid of this? It's really a bummer that this happens in a dead end, and those red dice always happen in a dead end. So for us, there's really no incentive moving here other than really removing those dice. And I think we really have to do that. So I guess in this case, I think we could move down here and then maybe do another science action and just getting rid of that red die, and then maybe moving back. Maybe that's something that we should do. Yeah, let's do that. It's really, these are really one of the ways, but I really want to get rid of that red die here as soon as possible. Or could we also, but that's a 7, and these guys only have 2 science points here in total. This will take them ages getting rid of those. Of course, I could consider starting to send these little bots here, the robonauts, to the assistance of those, but right now I don't feel like it, and we don't have any build cards available anyway, so I think we have to get rid at least of this red die here for now. So yeah, let's do that. So I guess I will go for option B now. So we are playing our science card in here. I'm not playing the science card here because I want to avoid that we have all the science card only in one row here. I think that's really kind of a problem. Let's not do that. And now we can decide if we want to play another standard movement card or if we're going for one of those. But because we still have standard movement cards, I think, yeah, that's perfectly legal or making sense playing the standard cards there. So we can choose the order of things. We will, of course, moving first. And here it doesn't matter in any way which astronaut we are actually sending. So I guess we are sending the US astronaut in here to the T segment. Yeah. In theory, they have a movement rating of 3, but again, we are only moving 1 space into the T segment here. This was our movement action. Now we are going with our research action. We have a 1, which means we are taking this red die away. So in theory, we can continue to build or extending the station. That was already our action. What are we going to do next? I think we should move this guy back now, actually. I think this die here is a lost cause. It comes with a great special ability. That's pretty much another wild card here, which is amazing. I think at least that's what it is. But I guess we want to continue moving into this array because there are other dice. We have this 5 here, for example, that we could get rid of much easier, actually. So I guess we are partnering this movement here with one of our training cards. For the training, I want to go with another science one. I think we have to start upping our science and also the build points. So don't get me wrong, that's something that's hugely important. And also the movement one, actually. We also have to make them more agile and make them move through the station much faster. But let's stick to what are we going to do next? No, I think as we are moving, let's go with another science one first. And again, for the movement down here, we are moving the US astronaut back here into Destiny, because from there we could use the combined movement value from both astronauts here to move basically this guy here also to the Roosevelt module later on to continuing extending our station. Okay, but that's again was our action. So things are typically relatively fast in the game, but of course there are times where you have to really think things through, discuss this with your other players, who should play what, at which point in time, which card are you taking, when are you using one of those command cards and whatnot. So we're still only very few amount of different actions, but typically a lot to discuss. So is there something that we need to do immediately? In theory, because we have to pass relatively soon, I'm really thinking of using one of those as a training card actually. Might be wasteful, but again, because when we are passing and we only assign one of those, that's kind of lame. We still have this one, keep that in mind, so we can always add a 1. 2, 3. This could make sense now actually to going for another training marker. Yeah, let's do that. So we are playing this card in here because this goes away. This will be removed from the game. But does this help us? Oh, does the movement help us? Okay, that's now bump. Okay, no, let's back up or back down for a second. Because if we are moving away, then it doesn't help us. Maybe we should use to move it and build actually, because then we have enough. Do we have enough build points? No, we don't. We actually don't have enough build points. But still, then it's all the more reason to do that. So no, we will play it as a training card. We will use this for a movement card. Right. For the training, we will go for this time for a build training. I think that's what we need. Yep, that's the case. And for the movement, we are moving the US astronaut here to Roosevelt. Again, they have a combined movement rating of 3, so he can move 1, 2 spaces here. There's also no real space limitations whatsoever. So whenever you're running out of space, you simply put them next to the station. That's really not a problem. Okay, now together they have 4 build points. For this module C we need 5 build points though, but that's not a problem because we are now going to pass anyway, or we are calling for a shift end, which means again we are moving this little satellite over. We are assigning the training tokens accordingly. 1, should we go for a 3 or should we have more 2s? Now let's go for a specialization. So we are adding this or upping this US based astronaut to a 3 actually. That was not good. Okay, that's the better deal. So we have dealt with that, and we still have this science or research training mark, and I think we want to assign this to the Danish astronaut over here, so he can also start doing some research sooner or later. Then we have to deal with the cards in the array. This goes out of the game. Those go back to our hand, so we only have 3 cards now at our disposal, which was one of the reasons why I want to make sure that we're getting those. This will be the bottom row, this will be the new middle row. It doesn't really matter where those are actually, because again we are only interfering with the middle and the top row in this case. And I guess that's pretty much the end of the round, or the end of 2000. And I guess before we are going into the next round, I will end my video for today, and we'll leave it up to you if you want me to continue my little journey here on the ISS, if you want me to continue extending the station accordingly. I think it's really not an extremely long game, so I think with another video, because the pace will now increase, I have explained to you most of the little rules and mechanics of the core game. Yeah, some of the special abilities you haven't seen yet and whatnot, but overall the majority of things you have seen. We have not used the robonauts yet, but again they are simply adding 1 more die point, and we can deploy those robonauts by using build cards, for example, or also using some of the special abilities like this one here on Tranquility, which allows us to move a robonaut. But apart from that, I was able to show you most of the mechanics of this game. Again, I'll leave it up to you. Leave a comment, leave a vote, whatever, here on YouTube, on BGG, you name it, and I will consider continuing my little playthrough here of Mission ISS. I really hope you have enjoyed it so far. I hope it really made sense, and I also hope I haven't messed things up from a rule perspective. I think I should be okay, actually. If not, let me know, and I will try to correct that as much as possible. Hope to see you soon in one of my other videos. Huge shout out to all of my patrons out there. Really do appreciate all your support. And yeah, until the next time, see you all. Bye bye.